Well, hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. In this episode, we're going to talk about Silvopasture and why you need to incorporate it on your homestead. Well, let's get to the trees. Okay, so talking about Silvopasture, probably the first thing we need to do is just define what is Silvopasture. Well, it's my understanding Silvopasture is incorporating livestock grazing pasture and forest management, tree management, whether it's for timber or whether it's for fruit production, nut production, managing those two together symbiotically so they kind of benefit one another. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, I have to say I had no idea what the heck Silvopasture was until just a couple weeks ago. And it's kind of funny. That's what I love about this channel, and I love the feedback that you guys give. I can't remember who it was. I'd have to go back and check. Somebody pointed out, hey, are you using Silvopasture practices? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what that is. So when I looked it up, I thought, hey, I'm actually doing this. So I've been doing it for a while, just never realized it. So it has a lot of common sense elements. So it was a really interesting discussion and got me thinking, we need to address this and talk about it and look at what I'm doing, the practices that I'm doing, and maybe put more effort into that and manage. So how does that come to play? Let's talk about details. So there's really two ways to look at this when we're talking about Silvopasture. Depending on where you are on your homestead, you may be out on the prairie and have all this wide open flat land and you don't have a tree to be seen. And you may be coming at it from that angle. Or you could be like me, where you're in the middle of the mountains, you got rough terrain everywhere and it's absolutely covered in trees. So what are we talking about here? Well, to have a Silvopasture, if you've got all this wide open prairie, then you got to plant trees. If you're like me, where you got all this forest land, then you got to clear some trees and open up some grass, get some grasses going. So what are the practices that I've been doing already without even knowing I was doing Silvopasture? Well, a lot of it is what you see behind me. It's been clearing land to let the pigs come in and do their thing as I try to clear land and move further up our valley here. It made sense to me. We're in the Appalachian Mountains, so we've got all this beautiful hardwood. So if you look right here on this, behind me here on this hillside, where I've got a broken ankle, where I've got this hardwood forest that I've cleared out, I've left on this, especially on these very steep hillsides, to combat erosion, but also it's just steep. There's not much I can do here. It's not like I'm going to be driving my tractor down this portion or doing anything. So I've left these white oaks behind. And as I'm standing here, I'll probably get nailed in the head of an acorn. There goes one right there. Acorns are just cascading down right now. And so what's the benefit of that? Well, obviously that is some incredible protein for my hogs. As they come around and they're sniffing around looking for stuff, they will vacuum this place. So within just a matter of minutes of them discovering that there's a bunch of acorns on the ground, they'll come over here and nail those. So you look at that and say, well, I left these trees behind, so it's going to help with erosion. It's going to control erosion. It's going to provide much needed shade in the summertime for the pigs. Really nice canopy here on these white oaks. But in the fall, it's going to produce a whole lot of free protein. And that's huge when you think about finishing your hogs, especially if you're going to finish your hogs at the end of fall. Across this valley here on my other pasture is where I actually have my hogs that are going to market this fall. This pasture I'm standing in is actually my breeding sow, so you get to enjoy all the protein here. But over there where I have just as many white oaks, those guys, they're going to finish their life cycle just loaded up on hickory, on walnut, beech nut, and acorns. So there's all kinds of really good protein they're getting that I'm not having to spend money on. So that really helps build their body structure up, and of course even enhances flavor. If you do any searching and look around and see where some of these places in Europe are finishing their hogs in these pecan orchards or whatever, it's they're getting top dollar for that stuff. So that's what I've been doing. Now Silvopasture is much broader than that in my understanding. And if you look at, if you've got fruit trees and you've got those things in place, then you can actually let your animals collect that dropped fruit and be able to get free nutrient from that, or you can collect them and throw them in there. Well, one other thing to point out is another benefit of those trees growing in your pasture is, depending on what you leave behind and the quality of those trees, you can actually be getting something that has a lot of timber market value to it. So as that tree matures and you decide to thin that out or plant something else in its place, then you can actually have some harvestable timber there for additional revenue. Now again, you want to be careful. You don't want to go and cut down everything in your pasture and then you've kind of destroyed that effort. But that's an option as well. So there could be additional revenue gained over time as these trees mature in your pasture. So what's the benefit for the trees? Again, we talked about this symbiotic relationship. If the trees are providing all this food for your animals, what are they getting in return? Well, obviously, as the pasture is grazed by large animals here that poop quite a bit, then you're getting a lot of that nutrient, you're getting a lot of nitrogen put back into the soil. So Merida here is a great poop maker. She is a nitrogen builder. So she will make a lot of nitrogen that'll get worked into the soil and obviously fertilize the trees. So again, they're getting that nutrient there. But also, if you look, this area around here where she's actually digging, she is really reducing a lot of weed pressure. Now, these larger white oaks that I've shown, she's not going to destroy those. It's not like she's going to uproot a 28-inch diameter white oak. They may rub against the bark to scratch, and as long as they're not delaminating that bark, they're not destroying the tree. So, but she is keeping the weed pressure and the saplings around that from building up. So you got to take that in consideration as well. It reduces competition, but obviously nothing new is going to grow there. Well, as I mentioned, I've got the benefit of having all this forest that I'm just cutting down trees to clear out and pasture, and then obviously planting grass. So what if you're on the flip side, if you've got to plant trees? Well, actually, you have a lot more options in that. If you've got wide open pasture, hopefully you've even got flat land, which is a rarity around here. So hopefully you've got that type of structure. Hopefully you've got that type of layout, so when you go to plant, you can choose and say, okay, I want to space these things apart for maximum efficiency, maximum growth, maximum yield. Whereas here, if I've got a 100-year-old oak tree, I can't move it. It's going to be where it is, and I just have to work around it. Like, I actually have a really nice oak, and that thing is straight as a phone pole, produces tons of acorns, but it's sitting right in the spot where I'd like to build a barn at some point. I'm thinking, man, do I really want to cut that thing down? And I really can't move 10 feet this way or 10 feet that way because there's just not enough flat land there. 10 feet over is a hillside, 10 feet up is a hillside. So it's kind of a drag, but that's what I'm running into. So I still haven't cut the tree down, but I'm still debating whether or not to do that. Torn. But if you're on wide open pasture, what do you've got the opportunity? Well, you're going to come in and plant. And you can see here, I've got some fruit trees planted, and it's not that this is necessarily a silvopasture in the making. As these mature, maybe. May never put pigs in here on my fruit trees. But you can see I've got my cages around here. That's to keep the deer pressure down. That's not going to stop a pig. It's not going to stop a cow. Probably not even going to stop a goat if it wants to get in there and graze on that. So obviously you have to protect your new plants that you're planting, whether you're going to put fruit trees in or nut-bearing trees. Those type of things, you're going to have to protect them. So if I was going to let the pigs in here and let them graze and keep all this weed pressure out, then I'd have to change this big time. Obviously, we'd have to surround this with electric fencing and really keep them away from it. There'd be certain things I'd have to put in place. Silvopasture just isn't reserved for large animals. We're not talking about large ruminants or pigs or those things. You can actually use silvopasture concepts with your chickens. So if you think about, maybe this is a perfect example of an orchard. If you've got an opportunity there where maybe cherry trees, apple trees, whatever, and you've got these trees producing a lot of fruit, maybe you temporarily let your chickens come in there so they can scratch around, eat all that down fruit, of course eating all the fly larvae and all that's going to be in the rotted fruit on the ground. They're going to have a great time. Now they're going to scratch up the ground, and you may not want to have them exposing the roots of your fruit trees, but that's something you can obviously move them out at some point. And I've also heard that with ducks, I don't have ducks, that you could even do the same with ducks, and ducks don't scratch, so they're not going to tear up the ground as much, but they're going to come through. Now, whether it's ducks or chickens, what are they going to leave behind? They're going to leave behind, obviously, nitrogen-rich fertilizer there for those areas. So look at that. Now, again, I've just scratched the surface of silvopasture, and I'm still learning about it, but I really like the concept and realize that I've been doing it already, but now it's kind of changed my way I look at things even more so, and I want to be more deliberate in what I do. So when I go through and say, okay, I'm just going to clear out this area here because I need flat land to expand our chicken operation, or to allow more grazing, or eventually get a cow in here. I'm still going to look at that and say, well, okay, let's leave that one behind, or let's leave this tree here because it has a history of good production. And it also is allowing me, places that I may not get to for years to start clearing. I'm now making mental notes of, okay, is that good genetics? Is that hickory tree? Is that shagbark hickory over there? Is it always producing hickory? Like I've got one, I'm actually standing right in front of it. There's a shagbark right there. Actually, no, that's a shellbark hickory. Shellbark hickory right here. That thing every year produces such great hickory nuts that when I mow this hillside with the mower, it's like I'm driving on golf balls. Like I'm going to break my neck and go over the hill, because it's just constantly raining down those hickory. I don't let the pigs over there because that's too close to the backyard of the house. In fact, what I actually do is I pay the boys $5 a bucket to fill them up, and then we toss them in the pig pasture so they can eat them. But that tree has great genetics. You hesitate to ever want to cut that thing down, even though I would like to clear more back in there. I hesitate to cut it down because it has such great genetics. But if that's one of the things where I could do propagation from that tree, take starts from it, or obviously even try to take the hickory nut itself and get it to roots. So look at those type of things. As you go through your pasture and you say, okay, I'm eventually going to clear this area out, make a note of the genetics. If it's something that's got a lot of rot in it, it looks like it's got 1 foot in the grave, go ahead and cut it down. Don't keep it. It's going to be dead soon anyway. But if you've got a very solid tree like this oak I'd mentioned, then you want to keep that in play and leave that as an anchor part of that part of your pasture. We'll talk more about silvopasture as we get into other episodes and get into some additional details. But I really want to just kind of hit the highlights of that first, and just kind of get the discussion going. So feel free to comment below if you have any input on this, and if you're using these practices on your homestead. Don't forget, we are going to be giving away our hat. I'll be doing the drawing next week for our September drawing, which will be a hat. So I'll be giving that away, doing that drawing next week. So make sure you're on our email newsletter list. Go to redtoolhouse.com. On the home page down at the bottom, there'll be a button to subscribe. Do that and you're automatically entered. And be sure to check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Red Toolhouse Farm. And again, no matter what you're doing, whether you live in a high-rise apartment or out on 1,000 acres in the middle of nowhere, just go out and get your hands dirty. Take care, everybody. Yeah, we can tell who's in heat around here, can't we? Like a bunch of moody women. Moody pig women. You still in? Yep, you're still in. For show. Silly.